Being raised by his parents, the Jedi fugitives Mali and Galen Marek, Galen Marek lived for a few years among the Wookiees on Kashyyyk. His mother was killed by Trandoshan slavers, whereas his father was soon afterwards murdered by Darth Vader during the Imperial sacking of Kashyyyk. However, before Vader could finish the job, Galen inadvertently snaps Vader's lightsaber with the Force. Sensing Galen's high concentration of Force sensitivity, Vader decided to take the boy as his secret apprentice in order to train him to take down the Emperor, dubbing him Starkiller. Over the years, Galen was ruthlessly trained as a Sith assassin by Vader and a lightsaber training droid named Proxy. When he was 17, he was dispatched to kill several Jedi who had escaped Order 66, including Ram Kota, Kazdan Paratus, and the council member Shaak Ti. However, he was discovered afterwards by Darth Sidious, who ordered his execution. Afterwards, Vader retrieved the boy's body to have him revived and rebuilt. Starkiller was given a new assignment to assemble an army of rebels to distract the Emperor and his spy network. After recruiting Ram Kota, who had miraculously survived their previous encounter, as well as wiping out various Imperial military targets, Starkiller was eventually able to assemble the Rebel Alliance with the aid of Kota's political contacts, including Senator Bail Organa. Once the alliance was assembled, it was time to bring the fight to the Empire. However, Vader ambushed Galen and the rebels, revealing that the young man's entire life was a lie, and left him for dead. Galen finally decided that enough was enough. After scouring the Outer Rim and discovering the first Death Star, Galen finally confronted and defeated his master, and even defeated Darth Sidious himself. However, he was talked out of killing him by Kota, as giving in to his anger would drive him back to the dark side of the Force, and undermine everything he'd worked to accomplish. As the rebels prepared to leave, Sidious attacked once again. Galen ultimately sacrificed himself to allow his allies to escape. His sacrifice ultimately inspired the rebels to finish his work, and the Empire was eventually defeated.
Mace Windu, considered by many to be the most powerful Jedi during the Clone Wars era, second only to Yoda, was born on Harun Kal 72 years before the Battle of Yavin. Trained by Grandmaster Yoda and the Neti Jedi Tirasa, Windu became one of the greatest lightsaber duelists of all time, respected by his peers for his knowledge and power in the Force, and his unique combative abilities. Windu trained as a Jedi Guardian, eventually developing an entire form of lightsaber combat with fellow lightsaber master Sora Bulk. Vaapad was the variant of Form 7 Juyo and fed off the rage and dark side energy of the opponent. It was highly aggressive and dangerous, both mentally and physically to the user. And its training was limited only to the best of the best, though many fell to the dark side in the process, including Sora Bulk and Windu's own Padawan, Depa Billaba. Mace was granted the rank of Master, elected to the Jedi High Council, and eventually became the Master of the Order for many years. He fought in many conflicts during the Clone Wars, but nothing was quite as challenging as when he heard the truth about Chancellor Palpatine, and the war itself from Anakin Skywalker. Mace gathered the most powerful Jedi currently on Coruscant into a strike team: Agen Kolar, Saesee Tiin, and Kit Fisto, and gave orders to Masters Jurok, Shaak Ti, and Sin Dralg to protect the Jedi Temple should his strike team fail. The Jedi Masters took a ship to the Chancellor's office, walking into the room and igniting their lightsabers, placing Palpatine under arrest. The Sith Lord ignited his lightsaber and speed blitzed the Jedi, killing two almost instantly, and killing another one only seconds later. Mace, the surviving Jedi, dueled the Dark Lord and was willing to lose himself to the dark side if it meant the end of the Sith. After a long duel, Mace disarmed Sidious of his lightsaber. At that moment, an emotionally unstable Anakin Skywalker walked into the room with conflicted loyalties. Mace was distracted by Anakin and was soon overwhelmed by Palpatine's powerful Force abilities. Anakin was given a choice and chose to give in to the darkness, cutting Windu's hand off and allowing sufficient time for Sidious to counter with Force lightning, killing Windu and throwing him out into the Coruscant night. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is ForklifterMatt, and thank you so much for your patience on this one. This has taken a long time to come out. And I also want to say thank you so much to Rico, Chico, Malico, who is my collaborator in this episode. And he's a fantastic YouTuber. If you haven't already, check out his channel. Please subscribe to him. His content is superb, and just thank you so much for collabing with me. Hope you enjoy my latest installment of my Versus series, Galen Marek versus Mace Windu.
Galen Marek is a human male in his late teens. His physical traits are all very well honed thanks to the brutal nature of his training under Darth Vader, having been consistently broken down and built back up. He was able to compete with the cybernetically augmented strength of Vader, and was even able to outpace the Dark Lord, despite the fact that Vader has been described as being able to move faster than thought, along with occasionally moving so fast that he appeared to teleport. After he was rebuilt following his sham execution, the Force Unleashed novel makes note that he had been rebuilt tougher than ever, and it is clear to see that his base level of physical hardiness was elevated to the superhuman levels, since he survived having a solid and rather heavy stone table thrown at him, and he came away with just a few cracked ribs, and a few days later he was able to fight Vader and Sidious. Even before his reconstruction, he was able to contend with Shakti, despite the fact that she landed several skeeves to him with her lightsaber. His agility was also impressive, by his ability to dodge blaster fire. His stamina was formidable. During one of his early sparring matches with his master, Vader deliberately drew out the fight in order to test him, and Galen held out for hours before exhaustion finally overtook him. This endurance has been further demonstrated by the fact that despite only having a few days to recover from the injuries dealt to him by the table, he was able to fight through scores of Imperials, and then proceed to contend with a fresh Darth Vader, and still demonstrated no extensive or apparent exhaustion. At the end of the day, Galen Marek was not one of the most imposing warriors at face value, but it would be foolish to say his abilities were in any way lacking.
Mace Windu, at the time of Revenge of the Sith and his death, was a 53-year-old Corran human, but was still highly skilled in acrobatics, hand-to-hand combat, and physical abilities in general, mostly due to force augmentation and light side preservation. In the novel Shatterpoint, Mace was able to move his arm faster than the eye could follow, even when he was injured pretty badly, and he was fast enough to appear invisible by striking Carvaster half a dozen times before he could even blink. In the Clone Wars micro-series, Mace showed impressive skills without his lightsaber, relying solely on force augmentation and his innate athleticism. On Dantooine, Windu was able to smash many super battle droids with his punches and kicks, moved at incredible speeds, dodged blaster fire from super battle droids, and was able to jump to insane heights and perform many impressive acrobatic maneuvers while in the air, effectively dodging blaster fire once again. He was also capable of dodging blaster bolts so fast that only a shadowy silhouette remained.
This one is pretty simple to call. While Mace can match Galen in terms of speed and is on par with him in terms of strength, and possesses considerable endurance of his own, this doesn't mean he can match Galen in this category. Marek simply possesses this final trait to a greater degree, and in his own arena, physical hardiness, he simply outshines Windu. If Galen's hardiness hadn't been elevated to the superhuman after his reconstruction, then they would be close to equal. Yes, in most cases, resilience doesn't affect physical output, but if both were to become seriously injured, which is certainly possible in this particular fight, then the one who can fight through the pain better and is more resistant to injury and damage has a better chance of coming out ahead. After all, if Mace had been hit by that table, his ribs would have likely been crushed. Not to mention Galen has continued to fight after being struck by lightsabers on more than one occasion. So by this logic, Galen Marek gets the physical edge. As a lightsaber duelist, Galen Marek was known to be rather unorthodox thanks to his training under Vader. Vader forced Galen to balance out his skills rather than becoming over-specialized. Initially, Galen was only instructed in the basics of lightsaber combat, later studying all of the 7 traditional forms, and gaining a working knowledge of each, as well as studying and applying skills with a few of them. His preferred forms were Form 3 Surisu, Form 5 Shien, and Form 7 Juyo. Form 3 was created as an answer to the increased availability in blaster technology, but later became the embodiment of pacifist Jedi philosophy. Form 3's typical moveset is based around tight and energy-efficient defensive parries, maximizing defensive coverage. Masters of this form are said to be invincible as a result of the perfection of their defensive technique, though somewhat lacking in terms of offensive viability. Galen's skill in Surisu was a carryover from his training under Proxy's Obi-Wan Kenobi combat module, and his skills were refined enough to hold off Ram Kota's randomized Form 7 offense, and he was even able to hold off Darth Vader's powerful and sophisticated Gem So offense. Granted, his familiarity with Vader's fighting style could have aided him, but by the time of their final battle, Vader and Galen had been apart for almost a year, which gave both time to improve. While some believe that Vader wasn't going all out during this fight, statements from the Force Unleashed 2 novel directly contradict this, even stating that Vader's fight with the first Starkiller had him fighting in earnest, not something you do if you're holding back, which also caused Vader to fight more cautiously against the clone. It is true that Marek had difficulty in defending himself from Shaak Ti, yet this was before he had reached his peak in skill. Plus, Ti was noted as manipulating the Sarlacc and the native Felucian flora, and thus put Galen at an environmental disadvantage. Form 5 was created as an answer to Form 3's lack of offense, using the tactic of following up defensive parries with instant offensive counters. It had 2 variations, Shien and Gem So. Galen studied the Shien variant, which was designed for blast deflection, but focused on aim deflection, deliberately aiming bolts back at the shooter. Galen's skill in Form 5 is shown through his skills in both aim blast deflection, as well as his almost constant use of the reverse hand grip tailored to the style. Form 7 is the most aggressive form of lightsaber combat, focusing on bold and direct, yet randomized and unpredictable swordplay. Form 7 is the most demanding form in both physical and mental sense. However, the physical strain is next to nothing compared to the mental requirements, as it requires its practitioners to allow themselves to give in to their fury and become swept up in the thrill of battle. While Galen has fought using his emotions as a weapon in the past, this was not his typical application of Juyo, and he in fact fought with a somewhat more detached and calculating mentality. Form 7 also requires their practitioners to have mastered multiple forms, so they have something to build their Juyo from, which gives us an indication of how advanced Galen's skills are. Galen also has some skills in unarmed combat, even defeating an Imperial Shadow Guard by breaking his neck. Marek also had considerable skills at chaining force-based attacks into his attack patterns, applying every avenue of attack available to him, ranging from powerful and creative uses of telekinesis, and varied bursts of force lightning. Galen's typical approach in a lightsaber duel was to apply a mix of attack and defense, cautiously probing his enemy's defenses whilst assessing his opposition before then applying whatever skills and powers that he decided were appropriate. All in all, Galen was an unorthodox but highly skilled duelist, and while his primary combative effectiveness came from his use of the Force, his dueling skills are not to be underestimated.
Mace Windu was one of the best lightsaber duelists of the Jedi Order, and was considered to be on par with Grandmaster Yoda and Master Swordsman Count Dooku. Mace was such a renowned swordsman that he eventually developed his own form with colleague Sora Bulk, as I stated earlier. This development was a form attachment of Form 7 Juyo named Vaapad. Form 7 Vaapad was a form derived from Juyo, one of the 7 classical lightsaber forms, which was very aggressive and dangerous to the user, as it brings them very close to the dark side of the Force. But it was more than just a form, it was a philosophy and a state of mind. It feeds off the rage and the dark side energy of the opponent, channeling that energy, making a devastatingly powerful combat style. It was also said by Mace himself that he created Vaapad to answer his weaknesses, and he implies that he can channel his own darkness into a weapon. Just like Form 7 Juyo, Vaapad required that the user know or master all other forms to be most effective with the Form 7 variant. Mace passed this requirement with flying colors, and when he's not practicing Vaapad in combat, he has shown his skills in switching up his fighting styles in a duel instantly. He's been able to take on multiple enemies at once while using long, sweeping strikes of Form 1 Chico, use a tight, strong defense of Form 3 Sarisu, use acrobatics, hand-to-hand combat, and flamboyant blade work of Form 4 Ataru, use blaster deflection of Form 5 Shien, and the use of force abilities in combat of Form 6 Nyman. Windu's experience in lightsaber dueling is nearly unparalleled, and he has sparred evenly with Saesee Tiin, another respected swordsman, fought evenly with Sora Bulk casually, fought Asajj Ventress to a stalemate forcing her to flee, fought Quillen Vos in a sparring match, and was still a better swordsman than him, even though Windu was only using defensive maneuvers and was holding back. And he fought evenly with General Grievous atop a train in Labyrinth of Evil. And his most controversial duel, his duel with Darth Sidious, where he was finally able to successfully demonstrate Vaapad at its nth degree. However, I think it was also a part of Palpatine's grand plan to lose to Mace, since he was still able to overwhelm Windu with his powerful Force abilities. However, Mace was still able to disarm Sidious, though that was again due to his Vaapad amp, and Vaapad wouldn't have anywhere near the same effect on Marek, because Sidious didn't even try to hide his dark side energy when fighting Mace, effectively fueling Mace without end. Galen Marek and Mace Windu were excellent swordsmen, proficient in multiple different forms and fighting styles, and they were capable of taking on, and in some cases taking down, respected lightsaber duelists of their eras. However, we believe Mace is the better martial artist, because he was considered by many to be one of the best duelists of the Clone Wars era. He has also taken on better lightsaber duelists than Galen Marek, if only slightly, including Asajj Ventress, Darth Sidious, and General Grievous. While we are giving the edge to Mace Windu in martial arts, Galen Marek is not to be underestimated in this category.
Galen Marek was known to be a powerful Force wielder, his power and skill so formidable that Darth Sidious even admitted that he could have potentially been his equal.
You had such promise. You could have been my successor, my equal.
Although this is only shown in the bad ending of the game, so it isn't canon. Though it can still be used as a window for us to see where he could have stood if his full potential had been realised, especially considering the rate in which his power grew throughout the novel. Furthermore, even though the dark ending isn't canon in regards to the story, it isn't the first time a Force wielder disappointed Palpatine after they had their potential stripped, Anakin being the most notable example. Addressing his abilities, his skill set was basic, however his use was far from this. His use of physical augmentation was considerable, allowing him to move at superhuman rates of speed and contend with the overwhelming strength of beings such as Vader. His telepathic skills were capable, though they were limited to the basic mind trick, influencing the minds of weak-willed subjects to do his bidding. His use of telekinesis was extremely powerful and varied. While he appeared to rip a Star Destroyer out of the sky, all he really did was redirect the already falling ship, and then he still almost got crushed. Essentially, this feat is a demonstration of what Marek can achieve when tapping into his full potential. Despite this, his more conventional combative uses were very effective. His Force pushes were capable of sending multiple opponents flying, and even breaking the Force shields of opposing Force wielders. Now yes, I am aware that beings such as Shaak Ti, Kazdan Paratus and Ram Koda have all been noted as deflecting his attacks in the past, but remember this, at this point in time Galen hadn't reached his peak when comparing him to his depiction at the end of the story, where he had been consistently noted as becoming extensively more powerful. By the time of his battles with the aforementioned Jedi, his most notable demonstrations of power were limited to throwing around TIE fighters. By contrast, Kota had displayed enough power to rip away a space station, Kazdan had manipulated extensively large groups of Force droids, and Shaak Ti was among the most powerful Jedi of the era. So of course these combatants were at least a match for the pre-Prime Marek, and as such by the end of his life, he was more than capable of overpowering enemy Force users. And even then, he was still noted as choking out Kota and ragdolling Kazdan. He also managed to overpower Darth Vader's telekinetic might whilst being choked out by him. Some may argue that Vader wasn't expecting this and was caught off guard, but his attention was already fixed on Galen, so he would have seen his opportunity to defend himself. But Galen essentially managed to push back against his master's own telekinetic might with his own, and overpower it. Some may argue that his tendency to rely on the environment would suggest otherwise. But the counter I offer is that this is how Galen was initially trained. He was meant to be an assassin. Assassins in general are trained to be unorthodox and predictable, and are meant to use every tool at their disposal to get the job done. One of the most notable tools being their environment. Addressing Marek's other telekinetic abilities, he could catch and destroy TIE fighters and AT-STs with ease. He was also talented at guiding his thrown lightsaber to strike down targets from a distance. He could channel telekinetic surges into the ground to off-balance and stagger enemies. And he has even used Force Choke to kill specific targets, even successfully choking out Ram Kota. His most offensively destructive power was the Force Repulse, a gathered burst of Force energy that is built up and unleashed upon all targets in close proximity. However, his defense against telekinesis was spotty. He was able to defend against any attacks that he saw coming, though his passive defenses for guarding against any attacks that he didn't see were practically non-existent, as he essentially used the Force primarily for offense. But then again, he was still largely capable when actually utilizing his defensive abilities, as he was even noted as deflecting a telekinetic storm from Vader. Essentially, Starkiller just seemed to rely more on the offensive application of his powers, and as such neglected the use of his more passive ones. Galen was also an expert in the use of Force lightning. He has generated bolts powerful enough to kill large sentients, such as Rancors. He was capable of channeling it through multiple targets simultaneously, using it to charge up or shut out machinery, and even destroy AT-STs with it, and even channel it along his lightsaber blade, in a sense tripling his lightsaber range. While this last feat hasn't actually been witnessed within the first Force Unleashed, the second novel makes note of how the clone was able to do so in his fight with the Gorog, and the clone's skills were learned through his inherent memory flashes from his template's life, which means he would have had to experience a flashback of Galen doing this. He was even able to temporarily contain the energy of Sidious's lightning when tapping into his full potential. However, he wasn't able to protect himself from the resulting blast, which ultimately resulted in his death. At the end of the day, as a Force wielder, Galen Marek is best described as a battlefield juggernaut.
Mace Windu was a legendary Force wielder, using his power to lay waste on the battlefield and to off-balance his opponents in a duel. His primary strategy in dueling scenarios was to off-balance the opposition with powerful Force pushes, and to augment his physical attributes to insane levels. Telekinesis was one of the most basic Force abilities one could know, but Windu elevated it to the level of a Master of the Order, pushing entire armies backwards, manipulating large objects, and force pushing similarly powered foes with ease, including Sora Bulk, Quinlan Vos, and even used a dangerous ability called Force Crush on General Grievous, which gave him his infamous cough. He was also able to telekinetically move an AT-TE with little effort, casually pull down a large gate, and was able to move a steam crawler, a large ground assault vehicle, with some difficulty while severely injured. Suffice to say, Mace uses telekinesis as a blunt instrument with top-tier power, control, and finesse. Windu was also incredibly skilled with Force augmentation, though I have already talked at length about his physical capabilities, and I don't think they are worth mentioning again here. However, I will say that his use of Force augmentation was so effortless and so seamless that it makes other skilled Force users look amateur in comparison. Other than his primary uses of the Force, Windu also knew and demonstrated beast control, immovability, Force sense, and his most esoteric and uncommon ability, Shatterpoint. Shatterpoint is one of the most unique and obscure abilities a skilled Force user could know and demonstrate. Only a handful of Jedi and Sith knew this ability, including Darth Kaitis, Darth Krayt, Cade Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, Satele Shan, and Jaina Solo. Shatterpoints are complex Force occurrences, only seen by a select powerful few who had this innate ability. In layman's terms, Shatterpoints were mistakes, stress points, or faults in an opponent's fighting style or their actions. It could also apply to inanimate objects. For example, when Shatterpoint was applied to physical objects, one could effectively shatter it using the ability, like when Mace shattered that glass window on an AT-TE during the Clone Wars episode Liberty on Ryloth. Some people were even considered to be Shatterpoints in it of themselves, like Darth Sidious and Anakin Skywalker. There are basically two schools of thought when discussing Mace Windu's talent with this particular ability, and whether or not he could use it effectively in combat. I personally believe that he couldn't use this ability in a one-on-one lightsaber duel. However, if Mace did know how to effectively use this ability in a lightsaber duel, don't you think he would have used it in duels where he was pushed to the limit, like his duels with Darth Sidious and Asajj Ventress? Other than his fight with Jango, no other source has stated that Mace could use Shatterpoint combatively, especially in a lightsaber duel. So no, I don't think Mace could use it in a duel. Mace Windu was an exceptionally powerful Force wielder with insane telekinetic feats and Force augmentation feats. While he's never used Shatterpoint in a lightsaber duel, the ability is still very special considering only a handful of Force sensitives know it, and how rare yet powerful it is.
Another simple one to call. While Mace has demonstrated a formidable level of magnitude and tactical application, there is simply more to Galen. He has demonstrated magnitude at a higher level than Windu, a higher level of versatility, and therefore a greater overall level of tactical application. In addition, Galen has proven that he can overpower foes of even greater power than Windu, such as Vader. Add this to the fact that Marek makes more frequent and fluent use of the Force in single combat, and the outcome is clear. Galen Marek is awarded the edge as a Force wielder. While the game shows Starkiller wielding his own lightsaber throughout the whole story, this is in fact inaccurate. After his false execution, his Sith-style lightsaber was lost in the vacuum of space. After he was brought back to consciousness, he was provided with Rahm Kota's lightsaber, originally provided as proof of Kota's death. Kota's weapon featured a bulky hand grip and hand wraps for improved grip. Originally, it used a single green Adagan crystal as the focusing lens. However, Starkiller later replaced it with the blue crystal of his father's weapon, which he found within the ruins of his family home on Kashyyyk.
Mace Windu wielded a standard, single-bladed lightsaber from the Clone Wars era, though it featured a violet-hued crystal as the focusing lens, perfectly symbolizing Windu's own aggression. But other than that, it was fairly standard of his era, and had no unique differences that truly set it apart from any other blade or the conventional standard of lightsaber design.
In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest, Chancellor.
Both Galen Marek and Mace Windu wielded the conventional, standard single-bladed lightsabers of their era. Neither blade had any unique differences or aspects that set it apart from the other. And of course, no edge will be given in weapons and equipment. Rico and I both agree that the victor of this matchup would win a solid 7 out of 10 majority. The duel between Galen Marek and Mace Windu would start off as a pure lightsaber duel, with excellent swordsmanship from both combatants, and this is where Mace would truly shine, in the early fight. It would be a devastating yet beautiful display of martial arts and pure skill. Mace would be able to push Galen onto his back heels. However, Galen would withstand.
After a long lightsaber duel, the mid and late battles would start, and would consist of Marek attempting to find a large enough opening for him to use his powerful Force abilities to great effect while still holding Windu's assault off. starting with a subtle telekinetic surge implemented into the ground in the midst of a reverse backflip to disrupt Windu's footing, whilst simultaneously regaining his own composure. After slowing Windu's momentum, Galen further pushes his brief advantage, throwing out a more basic telekinetic push, or a burst of lightning to distract Windu, or maybe even hurling some loose object in his direction, forcing Windu to defend himself appropriately.
Taking advantage of this, Marek employs his own Geo-based offensive, with an excellent integration of subtle force maneuvers, following up body swings with lightning channeled along his blade, a telekinetic shove at Windu's feet after an overhead swing, or maybe even following up lightsaber strikes with loosely thrown objects, eventually finding an opening or lapse in Mace's fighting style. Marek would employ a massive force push or repulse to blast Mace across the arena into a nearby wall. Without giving Windu the split second he needed to recover, Marek keeps his briefly stunned opponent pinned to the wall with his full power.
As Windu attempts to resist, Galen slams him into the wall to further weaken his opponent. Then, in one final move, Marek pulls Mace forward onto his lightsaber, impaling him through the chest or dismembering his hands, taking the Jedi Master out of the fight. We declare Galen Marek, the Secret Apprentice, the founder of the rebellion, the victor.
Thank you so much for watching this video, and I just want to say a very special thank you to Rico, Chico, Malico. Rico edited his own sections, which is really cool, and it's so nice of him to do that. He's a really nice and genuine guy. It was fun talking to him, it was fun doing this collab with him, and this is one of my favorite Versus videos I've ever worked on. And thank you guys so much for your patience on this one. Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to me. And if you haven't already, go check out Rico's channel. I'm pretty sure almost all of you are subscribed to him already, but if you haven't already, please go over and subscribe. Please watch his content. Please like and comment on his videos. That would mean a lot to him, and his content clearly surpasses mine. His content is just really superb. It's phenomenal. And he's a lot more consistent than me, and he's a really nice guy, and he deserves all the success. So please go over to his channel. Link will be in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching again, and may the Force be with you always.